week. That very night, he telephoned me, and I had traveled. Then, I later told my daughter, please give him my phone number so that he will call me. I waited for him to call all night. Later, when I called back to my daughter said, well, I have called his office. The phone rang, nobody picked it. I said, that must be strange. But I waited all night. Very early in the morning, my phone rang in my hotel room. Immediately it rang. Joyously, I picked it. I called him, hey, Nna, because I thought it was my brother that was calling. And now the voice I heard was that of Assistant General Superintendent, the then Assistant General Superintendent. I said, yes. He said, please, we need you in Enugu right away. There is an urgent matter for you to take care of. I said, what? He said, there's an urgent matter that you will take care of for us, please. And immediately you get to Enugu, drive straight to Oduze's residence. That is where we are going to discuss. I just thought about it. Immediately I dropped the phone. I told my wife, I said, look at what Reverend Okoma has just told me. He said, what type of message is that? I said, my brother has died. He said, what do you mean by that? Stop saying anything. I said, nothing makes sense to me other than that my brother has died and I'm finished. He said, stop. I said, no. Because no other thing makes sense to me. And by the time I got home, indeed, my brother was dead. He was just coming back from court, getting into his office. He talked with his wife on phone. And after talking with his wife on phone, he said, when I get into my office, I will call you again. And when the wife's phone rang again, it was the secretary shivering. Your husband just dropped dead. You don't expect me to go and say, oh, glorious God, loving God. Oh no, I want to tell you that that day I bombarded heaven with questions. God, why? I even asked him, God, why not me? Why must it be my brother? Why? That is quarreling. Yeah, you see, the friends of Job told him, Eliphaz told him, he said, stop quarreling. Because quarreling doesn't solve any problem. Say, simply come to terms with God. And when you come to terms with him, you will have peace at last. Did anybody in the Bible quarrel with God? I think John the Baptist did quarrel. When he was taken into prison, after knowing what Jesus could do, he expected that Jesus would do something that will get him out of prison. But to his surprise, he was there, only hearing of what Jesus was doing. That was why he sent to Jesus, go and ask him, are you the one that all of us have been expecting? Or do we look for another one? That isn't a pious statement. There was a little bit of quarrel there. And the worst was the way Jesus answered. Go and tell him the blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the deaf will hear, the dumb will speak, and to the poor the gospel is preached. Does that attend to my need? But tell him also that blessed are those who do not stumble because of me. But that settled the matter. We never heard John question him again. I don't know how many of you that have ever read the book of Habakkuk. I think Habakkuk quarreled with God a lot. He quarreled with God a lot. Habakkuk is a book that started with a lot of questions, a lot of perplexity. But when it ended up with song. You know, he was asking God, why? Let's take a look at a number of things that can cause quarrel, or actually does cause quarrel between us and God from time to time. One of them is when his attitude toward things and events runs contrary to what we know about him. When his attitude toward things and events run contrary to the things we know, or at least we think we know or think about him. For instance, in Habakkuk 1:2, we hear Habakkuk ask this question: how long, O Lord, will I call for help, but you do not listen? Or cry out, violence, violence, and you do not hear. I am your righteous servant. I am your prophet. You hear the prayer of the righteous. That is what I know you to be. And you cannot see the righteous suffer, and the God, I know you to be concerned, yet I call for help, you don't listen. I cry out, violent, violent, God, you do not even come for my help. These are those type of things. I don't know whether you have found yourself in such a situation before. You cry out to God. You are living for him. You know you are paying your tithe correctly. You are liberal in giving. You are effective, active in missions, doing everything that God expects of you to do, and yet you are crying out for help, and he doesn't appear to hear. Another thing is his apparent indifference to evil. This was what disturbed Habakkuk most. For instance, the apparent injustice in the world, the wicked oppressing the righteous, victimizing the righteous. You see them oppressing God's people, injustice, inequity, evil that is being perpetrated in the world. And sometimes you begin to wonder, is there God at all? We ask such questions. It disturbed Habakkuk. And the oppression of the righteous by the wicked. I think this was one of the things that disturbed Habakkuk. Because even when Habakkuk was complaining about injustice, about wickedness, about these things that were happening, his prayer not being answered, his calling upon the Lord not being responded to. When God was answering him, what God told him is that he will use a nation more wicked than Israel to punish Israel more. God, what is the justice? You mean that Egypt, you will use Egypt to punish Israel? Where is justice there? Where is fairness? The righteous being oppressed by the wicked, he couldn't understand that type of act of God. The suffering of the righteous as opposed to the